going live. So, and there we are. I think we are live now on YouTube as we get ready. We'll just take some breaths.
I don't think we are live yet. I don't know what, did you just get a notice?
I did.
Hmm.
When do you want me to play my prelude? Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take the earth's broken wings and learn to fly. Oh, you'll learn life. You blackbird sing in the dead of night. Take the earth's broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you're only waiting for this moment to arrive. You were only waiting for this moment to arrive. You were only waiting for this moment to arrive.
My name is Amy Stock, and I serve as an officer on UUCA's Board of Trustees. Today is January 9th, 2022, and unfortunately, UUCA is back to entirely virtual. While it was wonderful to see everyone in person over the last few months, the good news is that we have great resiliency as a community and still have many ways to connect online. Our worship services in January will happen one service time at 10:15 a.m., live on Zoom and on YouTube. We look forward to worshiping with you and to seeing you at the Zoom coffee hour after the service. For many of us, a new year means making resolutions for ways to change and make ourselves better. But what if instead we took the time to reflect on who and where we already are? That will be my intention for the month of January, and I invite you to think about what your intention might be. Whoever and wherever you are, we welcome you to this community. Thank you for coming today. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Amy, for that welcome, and Maureen for the beautiful music this morning. The poet Rumi tells us to come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. I have heard that translated to idolater, deserter. Come, though you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come. Come this morning with every good intention. Come with every mistake you have made. Come with your sadness and your joy. Come glad to be safe at home, and come wishing we could be together in person. Come all the ways you are and all of who you are. Come in this moment, in this way. Let us worship together.
This morning, we will light a chalice along with hundreds of UU congregations across the country. Many of us are back in this environment online, wishing we were together. So I hope these words, like they will for me, that they stick with you just a little bit more while we're apart. We gather together as a community of memory and of hope. We gather to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love. Please speak with me. We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing both light and warmth to the world.
Thank you so much, Rev CTC. You know, I am aware that this is our first time sharing the Zoom chancel together. And as much as I wish we could be together on the real chancel, I am grateful for this new way to be in connection and community with you and with UUCA. And we have some special guests joining us this morning for our wisdom lesson. So I'd like to invite on Annika and in a little bit, Savannah and Jason. But Annika, beginning with you, I wondered for our wisdom lesson, if you could tell us a little bit about the principles at UUCA and how, or if you have learned about them in Sunday school over the years.
Yeah. Here at UUCA, the 8 principles are incredibly important to us. As a long-term student, and I speak for other children, we have learned a ton about them in RE and now here again today.
And Annika, in just a moment, I think that the adults who are watching are going to have the chance to hear a song about the principles, which some of our children and youth may already know. And as I understand it, that song has hand motions that go with it. So I wonder if before we hear the song, you could explain those hand motions to us as we continue to learn about different ways to remember and live the principles.
Yep. So the first principle is 1. We are all important, and it shows that everyone around us is just as important as we are. And the second one shows that we can trade and share with others with love and respect. The third is a symbol of our chalice, 3 wiggling fingers, and shows that we build a community together. And the fourth shows that we seek knowledge and adventure. Fifth shows that we have a vote. We have say and we can vote for what we want. Sixth shows 4, peace. We work for a peaceful world. The 7th shows that we care about nature. It's a tree and a bunny hopping below it. And the 8th, our newest one, is a heart, showing that we build a beloved community and show care and respect for everyone.
Oh, Annika, thank you so much for explaining that to us. And now we're going to invite Savannah and Jason to join you. And I think all together to present the principles song for us this morning.
1, each person is important. 2, be kind in all you do. 3, we help each other learn. 4, and search for what is true. 5, all people have a say. 6, work for a peaceful world. 7, the web of life's the way. And we build beloved community.
Savannah and Jason and your fabulous xylophone, thank you so much for singing and playing for us. And Annika, thank you for both teaching us about those hand movements and for demonstrating them as well. I am so grateful that our children and youth know our principles and that Leanne, as our Director of Lifespan Faith Development, has figured out all of these ways to make it easy to remember. And I hope that perhaps some of the adults who are watching will find that song or the hand motions an easy way to remember the principles too. So thank you very much for bringing your learning to us. It's great to have you with us this morning.
I think we're going to move into prayer as we go deeper into our service. Take a breath there at home. Let yourself settle where you're sitting. Let your body fill the space you are actually in. Today, I'm going to offer you an adaptation of a prayer written by John Saxon. It's titled An Interfaith Prayer for Justice Makers. I found this piece when I was looking for words to include in a vigil I participated in with UU ministers all across the country. We decided to lift our voices in prayer, in community, on the day of the anniversary of the insurrection. So take a breath. Join me in meditation, in centering, and let your body settle right here. Source of sources, Divine One, that which is known by many names, she who walks beside us on this journey of life. We gather together today in the cold of winter as people of many, many faiths, as Christians, as Jews, as Muslims and Unitarian Universalists, as believers and non-believers, as young and old, as gay and straight, as Black and white, Hispanic and Asian, and a multitude of colors. We gather as Republicans and Democrats, as documented and undocumented, as siblings and neighbors. We gather as a human rainbow united by faith and the ideals of justice, democracy, community, the common good, and love of our neighbors. Shelter us, darlings. Shelter us, we pray, when the cold winds of indifference and divisiveness and narrow-mindedness howl in the night. Shelter us when our hearts are chilled and the windows of our souls are rattled. Help us to find new hope when hope is so hard to find. Help us when we forget that this struggle is a movement, not a moment. When we wonder whether we'll ever reach the promised land, a beloved community. When we cry out in desperation and frustration and need. Remind us with the dawning of every new day that the moral arc of the universe is indeed long and it bends towards justice. Draw near and grant us the strength to stand up and speak out against injustice, discrimination, and oppression, the courage to reclaim right now in this day and this time the mantle of prophets who throughout the ages have spoken truth to power, calling upon those with power and privilege to drop their arms, instead to honor, respect, protect, and care for the least among us, to care for the poor, the homeless, the hungry, the sick, the broken, the forgotten, the strangers, and those who are othered in our land. Draw near and grant us too the wisdom and humility that we might speak our truth in love, and remember hatred and bitterness can never cure the disease of fear. We pray this morning. We offer these words in the name of all that we hold sacred, hold holy, hold right and good and true. Amen. Shalom. Blessed be Asante. Our reading this morning is one that many of you are probably familiar with. This is Choose to Bless the World by Rebecca Parker. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or to curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the hearts, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of these can serve to feed the hungry, to bind up wounds, to welcome the stranger, to praise all that is sacred, to do the work of justice, to offer each other love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, can hoard board, can hoard bread, can abandon the poor, can obscure what is holy, can comply with injustice, or withhold love. What you must answer is this question: what will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. The choice to bless the world is more than an act of will, a moving forward into the world with the intention to do good. It is an act of recognition, of confession, of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abide. There is an embrace of kindness that encompasses all of life, even yours. And while there is injustice or evil, there moves a holy disturbance, a benevolent rage, a revolutionary love, protesting, urging, insisting that which is sacred must not be defiled. Those who bless the world live their life as a gesture of thanks for this beauty and this rage. Those who choose to bless the world can take you into solitude to search for the sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. More so, the choice will draw you into community. The endeavor shared, the heritage passed on, the companionship of struggle, the importance of keeping faith, the life of ritual and praise and the comfort of human friendship, the company of the earth, the chorus of life welcoming and re-welcoming you. None of us alone can save the world. Together, though, that is a possibility waiting. The words of Rebecca Parker.
In the morning I wake and I pray that I can make use of the day, and that I won't cause you any pain. My love, my intention, mistakes will surely be made. Storm clouds bring on the rain, but acceptance shoots just like a ray of sunshine. Up in my ivory tower, let me come down from its power. Release a dove to the sky up above. Grateful for this very moment. In the morning I wake and I pray that I can change some of my ways.
just want to say, my love, my intention.
Maureen, thank you for that beautiful piece. For folks who haven't had the chance to hear Maureen before, I know that is one of her originals. And I'm so grateful. I think between that reading from our colleague Rebecca Parker and that piece by Maureen, we're set. That takes the pressure off me, really, because I've already been to church this morning. Thank you for both of those. I do, though, want to talk a little bit this morning with all of you gathered in the way we are, bringing all that we bring. And I so appreciate the sharing on the Zoom chat and perhaps over at YouTube as well about what you're bringing this morning, what you're struggling with, those that we're holding in our hearts as they struggle with COVID illnesses, our fear and worry as rates rise, our gratitude to be gathering back together. We know how to do this, friends, how to gather together in virtual times. And this morning, I want to look toward how we gather at any time, toward what it is that brings us together in a Unitarian Universalist congregation like this one, and how we might find a path for our own journey, and perhaps one for our journey together. So we are going to talk about the principles, what are often called in Unitarian Universalist circles the 7 principles, though here at UUCA and in many of our sibling congregations, we have adopted an 8th principle. And so we'll talk a little bit through those. Now, if you have been to any newcomers class at UUCA or at another UU congregation, you have surely heard about the principles. And as we heard this morning from our children and youth, they have heard about the principles in their RE classes. These are, in fact, the building blocks of who we are together as a UU congregation. The clearest articulation of Unitarian Universalist values. They are found, as a matter of fact, right at the front of one of our hymnals. And I know of at least one public servant who was sworn into office with their hand on a hymnal for exactly that reason. If you need a little refresher beyond the song that our youth brought to us this morning, I will remind you, the first principle calls us to the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The second, to justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. The third, to the acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. The fourth, to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The fifth, to the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The sixth, to the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. The seventh, to respect for the interdependent web of life, of all existence of which we are a part. And the eighth, currently being adopted individually by congregations, including UUCA, toward journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. So, if we have these 8 principles to live by, we're going to talk a little bit about what that might look like, what they could mean for us. But first, I wanted to explore with you just a tiny bit of a history lesson on where those principles came from. I'm indebted for much of this to a UU World article by Warren Ross that was originally published in 2000 and then has been republished since then. UU World is our national magazine. You can find it online as well, uuworld.org. So some of you know that Unitarian Universalism came from two movements, both originally Christian movements in the 19th century, each with their own heresy, their own way of being different than mainstream Christianity, Unitarianism and Universalism. And perhaps you also know that they merged in the early 60s. Well, at the merger, of course, they needed to come up with a way to describe what this new movement was, this combined Unitarian Universalist association. And if you've ever been to a congregational meeting, perhaps you know that there was lively debate. In fact, the debate went beyond lively and almost led to a dissolution of the merger as people tried to come up with an articulation of who they were, both honoring their two histories and saying who they might be together as they merged. They did come up with 6 statements that spoke about their history and about their principles, but they never quite caught on. And there were some challenges with the language. In 1979, Eugene Pickett, the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association at the time, thought that some of the challenges the denomination faced came in what he called our confusion as to what word we have to spread. The old watchwords, he said, of liberalism, freedom, reason, tolerance, worthy though they may be, are not catching the imagination of the contemporary world. If we are ever to speak to a new age, we must supplement our seeking with some profound religious finds, end quote. In the context of needing new language and seeking a way to speak to a changing world, in came the women of Unitarian Universalism. Led in the 1970s by women who wanted to remove sexist and exclusionary language from those original 6 principles that were articulated, and also out of a desire to acknowledge non-Christian traditions as core to who we are and believe, and the importance of the environment and our ecological system. Came several years of work by the UU Women's Federation and others, trying to convince people across the country of the need for change to the principles. Not so different from the work now, working congregation by congregation on the 8th Principle Project. Those changes were brought to General Assembly, our national assembly, where we make decisions together. Remember, every person has a vote, in 1981. But was met with concern from some ministers at the time, including the senior minister at UUCA then, that there weren't enough references to historical Christianity, that it had lost its religious tie. The moderator at the time, Denny Davidoff, a lay person with an incredible history and legacy in Unitarian Universalism, called for a time of study, a slowing down, and asked that these conversations be brought to the community at large, to individual congregations, using questionnaires, asking for individual congregational meetings so that people might study and consider what we believed, not what a little group decided, but what we in each of our church basements and on sticky pads and on blackboards felt were integral to our faith. A committee of 7 members met, bringing together the data from congregations all across the country. And as the head of that committee described it, the good old process of posting big sheets of paper all over the meeting room walls. That committee head was Reverend Walter Royal Jones Jr., and he wrote, "We really wanted to assure everyone that no point of view was going to be left out. We wanted to say to everyone, you belong." Eventually, a draft was created that included 7 principles and 6 sources, the historical and current sources of our faith, as well as the principles, what we believe and value. That draft had so many pieces of input from so many people across the country that it was finally adopted at the 1985 General Assembly with only one dissenting vote, which I think may just be a record. As I mentioned, the 8th principle has followed a grassroots process going from congregation to congregation, and eventually it too will come toward our General Assembly. In fact, an Article 2 commission is looking at the entire principles and sources section of our bylaws, those 7 principles and 6 sources, as mandated every 10 years. And they'll bring a proposal to General Assembly 2023. In the meantime, there have been a couple of changes since that 1985 adoption, including changing in one of the source languages, men and women to become people, so that we might include all genders. Okay, so we could go down a whole rabbit hole on the history of the principles, the exact wording of each one of them, the move toward the 8th principle that's happening now in congregations across the country and in Canada, and even just the governance of the Unitarian Universalist Association and how we make decisions as a denomination. Whew. But I am more interested today in how we make decisions as individuals and how our principles might be able to help us. And here, friends, is my source text. I'm gonna make sure that you can see this really clearly. This little Mead notebook, UU Principles and My Life, includes key musings from a 9th grade Amanda, Worth and Dignity of Every Person. As part of a Sunday school class when I was 13 or 14, I was asked to live one of our principles, at that time just 7, every day of the week for a month, and to journal about it in my tiny little journal. And you can see I kept it up all the way through each day, starting with the principle I was focusing on, and then writing about my experience through the day. So what wisdom does 9th grade Amanda have for us today? My very first entry reflected on the first principle, the worth and dignity of every person. I started out, I guess I killed this one. It should be noted that at the time, killed did not mean did really well at it. I went on. At a party, I talked about people I don't like with my friends. We also talked about a friend with problems, but not always in a really nice way. The entries go on with my application of the principles to my daily life. The worth and dignity one I could apply almost immediately, both in terms of how people treated me and how I treated others. But I struggled with some of the other principles. These principles are hard to apply to daily life, I wrote. I assume I didn't hamper anyone's search for truth and meaning, but I really can't say. I didn't lie to anyone, which I guess helps along the truth part. I mused that our world leaders needed to review Principle 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. I noted recycling and helping at the church rummage sale as being in line with Principle 7, respect for the interdependent web of life. I wondered about Principle 2, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and whether it was possible to be all 3 of those things at the same time in the same situation. But about halfway through the month, I put in an entry where I started to see a change. I tried to be nice to everybody today, I wrote. I had a pretty good day, actually. Maybe there's something in these principles. Throughout the journal, I struggle with the language of the principles. What does free and responsible search for truth and meaning mean? That we can't let it get out of hand? And with their relevance to my life, I couldn't figure out how I was contributing to the democratic process except by voting for class president. And there's a hilarious side comment in there about how my research on the Roman Empire for history class suggests they did better under a dictatorship. I wonder, of course, what my journal would look like today, what yours would look like if you took this practice on for a week, or more accurately for this congregation, for 8 days? Would I still find that some were hard to apply to my own life? Would I still be challenged by the first principle, by the ways I noticed myself violating it and the ways others around me do? Years after this practice, when I was in seminary, the Reverend Barbara Tenhove taught a class I took and included a metaphor of the principles as an arch. The first and seventh principles are the core beliefs Unitarian Universalists hold, that every person matters, inherent worth and dignity, and that we are all connected, the interdependent web of life. Beliefs that relate back to our Unitarian ancestry and its rejection of original sin. We matter, right, as we are, and our Universalist ancestry and its embrace of universal salvation. We're all in this together, the interdependent web. In between those core beliefs she taught us are all the ways that we might act them out in the world by supporting each other in our searches for truth, by making decisions to include everyone, by working for peace. The first and the seventh held each other up. And in recent years, I've heard that in addition to that metaphor, that the eighth is the keystone, the piece that holds an arch together, without which it would collapse. In the years since then, my decade and change of ministry, the principle people come to me to talk about, to ask how they can live more fully, is invariably the first. Their version of my 9th grade journal entries. How can I still love this person after they have hurt me? How can I retain my faith in humanity when I see so much cruelty around me? How can I understand my own worth? My colleague, the Reverend Teresa Soto, wrote in Spilling the Light, their poetry volume, about the first principle. The poem is titled Siete Principios Bueno Más el Primero. 7 principles, well, plus or most the first. In this bilingual poem, they quote the first principle, El valor y la dignidad de cada persona, the worth and dignity of every person. And they ask, imagine that the day arrived in which we left behind valuations of people as though they were houses or bundles of resources. This moment feels dangerous. There is something that resists all the dignities that are not those of white folks, damaging, risking the rest of the lives. How shall we respond? What is there for an answer? What does the first principle itself inspire? Let us rise against every unjust power, against the exercise of power without limits or ethics. It's time to imagine a different day, an undeniable connection with the entire universe, freedom in abundance, and peace in every heart. Reverend Soto, my seminary professor, even the preamble to the principles as written in our hymnal, they call on something that my 9th grade journal missed, or perhaps was grasping at without the language for it. The principles ultimately aren't individual guides. They are what we as a congregation do together with each other. The preamble says, we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote. Think back to the creation of those principles, not a list of how I want to live my life, but a co-creation, congregation by congregation, sticky note by sticky note, wall poster by wall poster, of what we are trying to do together. The covenant we create with each other, the agreement about what this is all for. Created in community, the principles are meant to be lived in community, not only about our individual daily intentions. Ultimately, the principles ask us to create a community in which they might be possible, in which we can each and collectively live them as fully as we know how, knowing that we will, just as I did in 9th grade, inevitably mess up, make mistakes, try again. Because here's another core element about our principles I discovered early on. They are wildly optimistic. Justice, equity, and compassion in all human relations at the same time. World community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And the 8th principle, envisioning a diverse, multicultural, beloved community, the kind that Dr. King dreamed of, which can often feel far from the reality of our congregations and the world around us. What is it then to live with the optimism, the hope of the principles? What is it to live with that hope now, with those intentions as core to who we are as a congregation? I don't know about you, but sometimes it is hard for me to remain optimistic. And so I return to the words of Rebecca Parker. Choose to bless the world. The words of our song from Maureen this morning. My love, my intention. Every time we make a choice that moves us collectively toward these lofty, optimistic principles, we are blessing the world. The choice even to gather online so we don't stress our infrastructure and healthcare system, we are blessing the world. By considering our individual actions in the context of our shared values, by treating each other with kindness and grace in our community life, by being curious about difference and moving toward each other in times of conflict, even simply by remembering through the song or the hand motions or whatever keeps it alive for us, that these principles are the values we have agreed on to name as our guides. That we are always in covenant with each other, agreeing when we become part of a Unitarian Universalist congregation, not to be perfect, but to affirm and promote these wildly optimistic values, these possibilities, these intentions in the world. Maybe you will want to try a journal for 8 days about how you live these principles in your own actions and in our community life together. Maybe you find that the beginning of a new year, even one that has started out as 2022 has, is a time to reaffirm your commitment to our movement's deepest values created together. Maybe you find that every Sunday, no matter how we gather, offers a tiny reminder of who you want to be, how you want to act, and most important, who we are together and who we can be, or at least what we can choose imperfectly over and over again. May we choose to bless the world. May we choose that intention together over and over again.
Do 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 do. Ah ah. Do words lose weight too often? If not said enough, are they forgotten? Do I bite my tongue out of overcaution now? Thought I had it all just figured out, but I'm slowing down with questions now. Is it okay to step back and look around? It'll just take time. Be patient with yourself. There's more room to grow if you leave your worries on the shelf. Don't look back, just go forward like you mean it. Say it if you feel it. Life goes fast, so go live with good intentions. Today is another lesson. Do, 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 Lost so much from overthinking. My head gets stuck, my feet lose feeling, but the fear's not enough to stop us dreaming now. It ain't easier being first to know. There's no need to be so precious, you can let it go. Don't look back, just go forward like you mean it. Say it if you feel it. Life goes fast, so go live with good intention. Today is another lesson. Don't look back, just go forward like you mean it. Say it if you feel it. Life goes fast, so go live with good intentions. Today is another lesson.
Thank you, Maureen. Just thank you. That was really, really beautiful. This is the point in our service when I invite you to make an offering to support this community, and this month in particular, to support the Dream Project. Our Sunday offering, 70% of it, as we share the plate, will go towards the Dream Project. They're an organization that is dedicated to a simple but critical mission: assisting youth by providing scholarships, mentoring, and advocating for them as they navigate the process of applying to and then attending college. Sharing our offering will help the Dream Project as they help immigrant students in this Arlington community. There are many ways to give. Please make note of what's on the slide. We have PayPal. You can write a check and mail it to the church. And if you go to our website at uucava.org, you'll also see these different ways to give noted on the website. As we move into the new year, please remember that by giving to UUCA, you are giving to the future of our community. And again, I want you to know that 70% of our plate this month will go directly to the Dream Project. Please give accordingly and give a little bit more. Thank you so much. We are grateful.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there
Wow. I've never heard of Lean on Me with the banjo before, but I'm ready to hear it that way again and again. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you. I have a blessing for the offering. We bless and receive these gifts, opening our hearts to true generosity. Please join me in these words. Let us be grateful when we give, be it a time, talent, or treasure, for giving brings us joy. Let us be grateful for our needs and the experience of vulnerability, for they teach us how to receive in community and love. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts to nurture our congregation, for it is a blessing to make a difference together. Amen.
Amen, indeed. We receive so many gifts in this congregation, gifts of music, gifts of care and connection, gifts of resources, and gifts of our history with each other. I'd like to invite, just before we close this morning, Bruce Ryder to share a little bit of his history here at UUCA. And then we'll be able to invite up Denise to tell us a little bit more about how we can be part of continuing UUCA's legacy.
Hi, I'm Bruce Ryder, and I've been coming to UUCA with my husband, Peter, since 2009, during a time when I needed help and I needed someone to lean on my year of late career unemployment in that last recession. From knowing that the church of my upbringing never did nurture my better self, I long searched for a spiritual community that made ethical sense to me. I found that spiritual home here. Among the many joys I have found at UUCA is a community of givers of time, talent, treasure that radiates these core values out into our community and our larger world. I found a community that embraces the joy and selfless giving that the capitalist narrative of the world we live in doesn't teach us. I have found a community that nurtures and encourages me to validate my core shared instinct for giving. For me, if I feel a momentary guilt these days about an ask, I now recognize that that's an artifact of my religious upbringing that cast giving as obligation. I feel gratitude in this community for having been released from that guilt and into joy. I love that individual members of this congregation model for me their own passion for giving at the very same time that I know that many others share their gifts much more privately. I love that there's room for all of that and that there's no wrong way to give, recognizing that we are all on our own search. I love that this community has helped me to clarity on my own values for balancing giving for the immediate needs, the urgent needs that are always with us, against those longer term needs that sustain our giving into the future, when those needs will still be there. I love that this community has stepped up in a big way to recognize the long-term need of the current capital campaign, just as at the very same time, our congregation has continued stepping up for the immediate need during the pandemic to feed the hungry, to shelter the immigrant, and to provide warmth and joy to those in greater need. I love you, UCA, for giving Peter and I gifts of support over the last 2 years as I was diminished by cancer. You gave me shoulders to lean on every day. Thank you. And you've shown me that you always find the way to give. Many of us have recently watched It's a Wonderful Life for the umpteenth time. Just as Bedford Falls would be a poorer place without George Bailey, Arlington would be a much poorer place without UUCA. If not for all the George and Mary Baileys of UUCA, who would be modeling, nurturing, and encouraging this giving in the world? Without UUCA, would our metaphorical George and Mary find another place so closely aligned with their values? Do we really want to take that chance that Mr. Potter's going to step up? I don't think so. That's why Peter and I have discerned that it was important for us to direct some of our giving to the long-term project of sustaining this church of givers, who in turn sustain us, our community, and our world. We have fulfilled our pledge to the Capitol campaign, and I said yes to visit with a few of you to ask, without guilt or obligation, if they will consider giving to the Capitol campaign. In this month of intention, I would ask each member of our congregation to join me in setting an intention for joy. Thank you.
Good morning, UUCA, and thank you so much, Bruce, for those beautiful words. You really captured so much of what has been in my heart over this holiday season, and thinking about intention in the month of January, and obviously how some of our intentions have been disrupted with the change in circumstances in Arlington. So I want to just share that one of my intentions for this month is to really hold the fact that as a group of people who are working on this Capitol campaign, that we need you all to know where we are and what we're doing, and to keep updating you. And so as always, I want to share a huge thank you to all of the support that we've received from so many of you already, and to share that more than 150 people in the congregation have made gifts to the Capitol campaign. I have an update to our balloon. So I will briefly share my screen so you all can see that. And so hopefully you can see that the level of beautiful colors in our balloon continues to rise as we've received additional gifts and pledges over the course of the past few weeks. So our team will continue to give you all updates, and I encourage you, as always, to please reach out to us if you have questions or would like more information. You've heard us say before to please say yes to a visit. I think there are several hundred people who are being contacted over the course of this month by members of our team, and I encourage you to say yes. This is such an important time for us to have these one-on-one connections and visits, since we can't be together in large groups safely. It's a great time for us to be together one-on-one in person or on Zoom like we are this morning. And I look forward to seeing some of you that way this month. I will put my contact information in the chat. If you have any questions or would like to hear more, please feel free to reach out to me. And thank you.
Thank you so much for your leadership and for your beautiful words. Bruce, I'm glad I had a moment to collect myself after you shared before coming back on. Denise, thank you so much for sharing with us how we're doing. Friends, benediction means a good word, sending you off with a good word for the week ahead. The truth is, though, that you have the good words within you. We share the good words in our values, in our song, in our chat box, in our care for each other. This week, my hope is that you find good words all around you, inviting you into living your intention, celebrating with you as you choose to bless the world. May it be so. Amen.
I was born by the river in a little tent, and just like that river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh yeah. yes it is. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. I don't know what lies beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. I go out to the movies and I go downtown. Some people tell me they don't want me around. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Then I go to my brother and I say, brother, please. But he winds up knocking me down on my knees. There have been times when I thought I wouldn't last so long, but now I know that I will carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.